Hey everyone, how are you guys?
Look who I found.
You found Was I Lost?
She's not lost.
I was not lost.
Not with red hair.
You can see my sweats. Oh boy.
Not with red hair. Tana and I just did a great podcast with Julianne Hough. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so
she's so cute.
Make sure I didn't notice. Didn't even notice at all.
It's a little hard not to notice.
But we talked about dance and the brain. She was really awesome. But we thought we would take this time and talk about relationships. And, you know, thank God for us, we really like each other most of the time.
No, because I mean, we've been hearing so many crazy things. I've been hearing about stories of child abuse going up and stories of, in China, the divorce rate skyrocketed after everyone got out of quarantine.
Really?
So I guess being locked up together, people are starting to get weary of each other if you don't have a good relationship, or if you at least don't have a way to survive it. So
well, and I had a session this morning with one of my patients and was struggling with one of his kids, and I'm like, wouldn't it be a great goal to fix that during April, right? I mean, now that we know we're inside, we're together,
right,
and it's going on another month, maybe two, how to make the most of it. Wouldn't that be a good goal to really optimize your relationship? And so we're going to talk about how to do it.
And I have a question. So for those of you watching right now, I'd love to hear your comments. How many of you knew when you heard this? What was your first reaction? Like, oh no, I have to be locked up with my family, or were you excited about it? Did you anticipate there was going to be some challenges to this, right? So
the teenagers were, oh no, I have to be locked up with my family.
So we anticipated that we anticipate, because I mean, obviously we're more psychologically savvy and, you know, used to sort of dealing with issues with people. And so we sort of proactively set all the kids aside and the whole family, and we talked about it in advance. It's like, look, we know that there are going to be challenges that go along with this. And so in addition to understanding that this is going to happen, probably to each of us in our own ways, which is going to express itself differently for everybody. Some people are going to be very vocal, some are going to be withdrawn, but that we need to have grace. And so before it even happened, we talked about grace in advance. And I think it's been really helpful, because I didn't really lose it until last week. And so for me, it was just, I got so frustrated going to the grocery store and seeing people just being disrespectful about the social distancing thing. And I just kind of lost it. And I came home and I'm like, just was so frustrated. And so that was my week to lose it. The teenagers lost it the first week. And so, you know, me losing it was me venting for, you know, a day and then I'm done. But I was just like, I stepped back and I was like, oh, I know what this is. This is just the frustration of being inside. It's the frustration of everything going on, and I need to like get it under control, put it in check. But we talked about it in advance, so that helped.
And I have a secret that, for example, whenever we go on vacation, not now, 10 things have to go wrong before I get upset.
Right.
Because just expect there is going to be trouble.
Right.
And given the stress, the worry, the loss, whether it's job loss, worry about money, lose
Groceries. Somebody
you love. I mean, those of you that, you know, have been listening to me know my mom and dad are in the hospital. That is going to cause people to be more reactive.
And they're going to lose sleep, and losing sleep is going to cause them to be more reactive.
And we've been really good about making sleep a priority.
Really good.
Making it a priority. All right. So tips. We created a mnemonic that'll help you called relating. And we're going to go through each of those letters and just talk about it. And the R is actually something I've been thinking about for a long time. The number one hallmark of self-defeating behavior. number one is blaming other people for how your life is turning out.
Right.
And so if you're blaming your partner for the problems you have, you become a victim, and it becomes impossible to change anything. Now, a lot of people go, well, it's not my fault. And fault is just not a helpful concept.
Yeah.
It's what I learned from you is the R is responsibility.
It doesn't mean blame.
What does it mean?
It means taking responsibility, the ability to respond. So it doesn't mean blame. So when I got cancer, it's like, yeah, I'm not to blame for that, but I do want to take responsibility for it because I want the ability to respond and take control of the situation. Same with relationships. And I think both of us are pretty good about doing that. Believe me, we have our moments where we're just like, I just need my space. But we're both really good about not blaming and then just like taking that time to just take a minute, breathe through it, go do our own thing, give each other space. We're also both really good about giving the other person space. We don't crowd the other person and get in their face when they need space. So, yeah, I think that's really important.
And, people say it takes two to make a relationship. And after being a psychiatrist nearly 40 years, I'm like, one person has a lot of power.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times a wife would come to me or a husband would come to me and say, the other one's not coming. They're not going to see a shrink. They're not crazy. And so as I work with one on empowering them to be better, the relationship becomes better because I know exactly how to make Tana crazy. I can get her to yell at me under 10 seconds. But I don't.
Just tell me shut up and do what I say, and that would do it.
But I don't. Why? Because it's not my goal.
Right.
My goal is to have a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship. Am I acting that way?
Right.
Or am I blaming her for the problem? And when you blame, you then give yourself permission to sort of be a jackass.
Right. And one thing that and I think this is really important, and I see a lot of parents who think they're not supposed to apologize when they say something to their kids, and I don't really understand that. It's like they're supposed to be right somehow because they're a parent. I think kids learn how to apologize and take responsibility from modeling. So I don't, if I'm in a bad mood and I'm kind of cranky and I snap at one of the kids, it's like, I have no problem, like I take a minute, but going to them and apologizing, right? After I've calmed down and things are fine. And it's like going to them and going, I'm kind of like just tired and cranky today. I'm sorry. That wasn't, I didn't mean to leak on you. And so, but how else are they going to learn it if they don't learn it from you?
So the R is responsibility. Take 100% responsibility for how you respond in your relationship.
Yeah.
The E is empathy, now more than
Right.
ever. Begin to see things from the other person's point of view because you have radical different upbringings, radical different perspectives, and so on.
And this is especially true with, you and I think as adults, we're a little more on the same page. And we are usually anyways, we're really good about this. But with kids especially, and I learned this actually from Chloe, our 16-year-old, she didn't handle this really well when it first started, which surprised me. And, but she made a good point. She's like, when we talk about grace, we should also talk about how each of us are going to experience this differently. And she's like, what's important to me and what's hard for me to take is not the same thing as what's important to you and what's hard for you to take. And she's absolutely 100% right with that. Right? Chloe just got her driver's license 1 week before this happened. She just got a job. She was supposed to start the weekend that this happened. And of course, they did a hiring freeze and let everybody go. That was devastating to her. Now, as someone with 51 years of experience on the planet, I'm like, okay, but that makes sense. And, this is all going to be okay. And in the end, that's all going to work itself out. But if I had just said that to her, that would have been not having empathy for where she's at in life. That would have been not being sensitive to her experience in life.
Right, and our first reaction is, hello, this is a pandemic.
It's not about you.
This is not a choice.
Right.
It's not about you. We have to keep each other safe.
But don't say that, that way. Now, Now, if they don't listen, you finally have
to
to
see things from the other person's point of view. And your brain is actually wired for that. We have something in our brain, in the front part of our brain, called mirror neurons,
Right.
where we are able to have empathy. Now, if you have no empathy, or your spouse has no empathy, it could have been they played football in high school, or they had a head injury from a car accident, damaged the front part of the brain. You damage your ability to see things from another person's point of view. But it doesn't mean you can't work on that.
Right.
The L is listening. It's so important. And during a stressful time, you want to say what's on your mind. But if you don't let the other person talk, then they're going to shut down and not say anything.
Yeah, one of my favorite things since this happened, we're trying to find the positive in everything that we can. And we have had amazing family time at dinner. And so we spend that time actually going around the table and asking questions and listening. Like, we used to do that we always have done that, actually. And then we got kind of busy the last year or so, especially since Chloe's kind of gone off and done her own thing. And now we're right back to doing that. And I love it. And so we spend that time listening. And especially, again, with the teenagers and with the kids, it's really important to listen to what they're saying and not just tell them. And I have to tell you, because this has been such an important time, especially with teenagers who are trying to exert their independence, there is a point where I listened, I had empathy, and then I actually went, okay, now I've listened to you, and I want you to understand something. As much as I love you, as much as I understand, this is still the way it's going to be. Because understanding and me being sensitive to how you feel is secondary to everyone being safe. Yes, I understand, and it's my responsibility to keep us all safe. So I listened first, and then I exerted that.
But, we titled this Intimacy, so we also have to talk about couples. And when you have listened, so the term for it is active listening. So when Tana says something, I just don't tell her she's wrong. That's actually dangerous. In my house, she has red hair. I don't tell her she's wrong. But the more I repeat back what I hear to make sure I really understand what she's saying, Tana's an ICU nurse. When she gives me a problem, I don't need to solve it. She can solve her own problems. What she needs is an ear. She needs me to listen. And active listening is you repeat back what they say and then listen for the feelings behind it. And before you give your 2 cents, you really make sure you understand where they're coming from. I hate the news because so often they'll have guests on and people are just talking over each other. Nobody's listening, and it just ends up in conflict and drama. So the more you listen, the better they will be. So responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness is the A. Because if you just give in to get along, what you're basically doing is teaching the other person to run over you. You teach other people how to treat you by what you tolerate.
Well, and then you become resentful. So because you let someone run over you. Right. And so one thing I learned in martial arts was there's a big difference between being aggressive and being assertive. And so they spend a lot of time teaching people to channel that feeling of aggression into being assertive, which is much more constructive. And I mean, I'm really fortunate, I feel, with you as my partner because you ground me and you do listen and you do these things. And obviously you are not only trained, but you're a kind person. But it's an important thing to start training yourself to do. And you actually are the one that helped me with the active listening thing. Because it's really, as an ICU nurse, you want to just but this is how it needs to be.
Airway, breathing, circulation.
Yes, ABCs of life.
Dirty rags on the floor. It's
ignore the bloody rags on the floor. Just focus on ABCs.
So Linda asks a great question, especially difficult for single people. No one to hug can be very, very lonely.
I bet.
This is so critical to stay connected and get virtual hugs. I can't see my grandbabies. I have 5 grandbabies. And even though 3 of them they live about 15 miles from here. I still can't see them, but I'm FaceTime with them. And then my other two live in Oregon and FaceTime.
Yeah, it's been hard for me with my mom.
Be connected. So we have to be socially isolated, but we can be virtually connected. So important to connect with your support group. Another one asks if this is going to be recorded. Yes, we're going to record it and leave it on my Facebook page.
And my Instagram and my Facebook. Yeah.
Good. So
we have all kinds of people waving and making comments. Thank you so much for joining.
So assertiveness is really important, but not, as Tana said, aggressive. The T is time. Now you have more time than ever. But relationships, bonding, really requires two things. Listening, really listening, and time, actual physical time. And even when you're sort of in the house all the time, a lot of people, they're really not connected at all.
Yep.
And so make sure you get a half an hour of time where, every morning I make Tana almond milk, pumpkin spice cappuccino. And she used to make it for me until she had to go out of town one day. And I'm like, well, who's going to make it? Because it was so
now he
good.
does it better.
It's so good. And it just tastes like dessert.
Right.
And so she taught me how to make it now as a way to say I love her every morning. I make it for her, and then we have a half an hour where we just talk about what's going on. I mean, we just basically adopted our two nieces, so our house that was basically becoming an empty nest house because our 16-year-old was just gone all the time. So now we have 3 kids, and it's just busy. So we need some time to stay connected.
All these people saying that they have more time than ever and there's nothing to do. I'm like trying to figure that out. That has not been my experience. I would love to know from you if that's your experience, because I have been busier than I've ever been.
Well,
with 3 kids in the house,
doing homeschooling,
and
then
no help, and you're
home.
Right. You're working at home. You've got your kids at home. You're doing homeschool. You're cleaning your house. You're doing all the cooking. You're doing everything yourself. And so it becomes really, really busy. So making time for your partner is something that has to become a priority. And I mean, even there's been a few days where I'm like, I'm tired. Like, we have to figure out how to do this, because otherwise it's really easy to just go, I'm tired, And so you can do that for a day or so, but at some point you need to go, wait, this is a priority. So you are my rock. And I know that I'm going to be better if my relationship is better. You're going to be better if our relationship is good, right? So we're better together than we are not together.
And time is really important, along with forethought. That's why you want to have a healthy brain. You don't have a healthy brain. One of my friends, Dr. Earl Hensland, says no forethought equals no foreplay. That if you're not listening and you're not spending time and you just expect the person to turn on under the sheets, probably not going to happen. Unless, I suppose, her testosterone level's really high. But you can't bank on that. So I is really interesting. It stands for inquire into the thoughts you have. All of you have heard me talk about ants, automatic negative thoughts. I think I have my ant puppet. Automatic negative thoughts damage, kill, really, relationships. You don't have to believe every stupid thing you think. I think one of the best things we did early on, I introduced you to my friend Byron Katie, and we went to her house and got to hang out with her, but we went to a 3-day workshop up in Big Sur, and just learning to get your thoughts as honest and as accurate as possible helps relationships, hands down. One of the best things you can do. I'm actually not a fan of positive pie in the sky thinking. I'm a fan of accurate thinking. But automatic negative thoughts just damage relationships. They infest relationships. So getting your mind right is so important.
Yep.
And so you have to develop an anteater that when she's negative, I'm like giving it to her to cuddle. Or really give it to myself.
Or
to
you could
cuddle.
just send me to go exercise, and that will help.
So helps her. She doesn't exercise. She's not nice.
That's not nice. But I told you that when I met you. I'm like, I've got to have time in the morning to exercise, or it does something weird to my brain.
Well, in the end is notice what you like more than what you don't like. And I have to tell you the secret about Tana. She so responds to positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And she so does not respond to criticism. Newsflash, me too.
Right. Most
Right?
people.
That most people don't respond. I mean, just think of it. How did they train the whales at SeaWorld with positive reinforcement? How do you train your dog? You know, when he does something wrong, do you yell at him? Do you hit him? Is that really going to be effective? No. You notice what you like more than what you don't like. And so I tell you you're beautiful,
You do.
and I tell you you're smart,
Even when I know it isn't
and
true.
loving.
I look awful.
Yeah, but for me, she's beautiful all the time. And then every once in a while, she got all dressed up, and I'm like, whoa. Heart still goes fast.
How many of you are in sweats today,
A
right?
dopamine drip.
The one thing we get to do is be home in sweats.
All right, so we talked about responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness, time, inquire into the negative thoughts, notice what you like. By the way, this works for children too. And the G you actually talked about earlier is grace and forgiveness. This is a hard time. It's hard for everyone. A number of my employees are actually married to firefighters and paramedics.
Which is, I mean, think about the fear of them bringing it home to the family, to the kids, to the parents, there's worrying about them being out. I mean, there's so much that goes into that for first responders.
It's a difficult
I
time.
remember being a nurse in the hospital, and I'd come home after dealing with patients that had methicillin-resistant staph, or whatever other bizarre infections that they have, flesh-eating bacteria and all this crazy stuff. And that's just one patient. And I stuck myself with a dirty needle one time with a patient with Hep C, and just the freaking out feeling you get from that one day, that one patient. Can you imagine being in a war zone right now? It's just a whole different, it's just something,
Well, and I'm
experienced.
trained as an Army psychiatrist. I trained at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and there's just no question we're in a war. And we need to support our healthcare workers as if they are soldiers.
They're acting like soldiers
But
right
the
now.
same with the postmen and with the Amazon delivery people and the people working
The grocery
at the
stores.
grocery store. These are all heroes that we need to
The people in factories
support.
making soap and masks, and it's critical right now.
It's critical right now. So grace and forgiveness. So if things have been hard in the past and you're still holding on to it and you're justifying why you're angry and negative and withholding, you might want to rethink that. And that goes back to our responsibility, not your fault, but do you want 50% ability to respond in your relationships?
Change the outcome.
Or do you want 100% ability to respond?
Yep.
So we hope this is helpful for you. We're grateful for you. We're going to try and post actually most days just to give you some encouragement during this difficult time.
Thank you so much.
Leave
Stay
a comment
safe.
or a question below. And we're praying for
Yes.
you and for your family.
Daily.
Take care.
Take care.